Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from wherever you are. I'm connecting today from. It's very dark here, as you can see. It's about 2 a.m. where I am. I'm in the northeast corner of Pennsylvania in the States. Really, really happy to be here. I'm going to start off by sharing my screen here so we can just dive right in. Um, Really excited to be here today. Really excited to chat for a few minutes with you all about sort of what we're thinking at Cisco, what I've been thinking as a workplace strategist, and kind of get into things. So just to frame it a little bit, just so you understand where I'm coming from, and when we talk about workplace at Cisco, we serve myself and our facilities management team. We serve over 76,000 employees globally. Um, Makes up for about 19 million square feet, about 465 buildings in 97 countries. So the apple cart, as they say, is pretty large at Cisco. We're quite an integrated team, and I'm happy to say that I think several of my colleagues have joined today from all around the world. So hello all, and thanks for dialing in. But I wanted to spend a few minutes this morning really picking up on a few of the themes that Andy just mentioned. And for me, he said something in there. He said it a few times actually about, we're at a place now where we're innovating by necessity. And that another one he mentioned more than once, which I completely agree with, and I'm going to get into here, is that not everyone can work remotely. We certainly at Cisco believe that as well. So I'm going to touch on some of those themes. And then really one of his asks for, the next day and a half for everyone is this idea around learning and adapting and taking what you're hearing from others and adapting them very much to how you work and what you do and what your companies do. So I'm going to give you slightly a Cisco view, but I'm hoping there's some nuggets in here that you could take back and really think about how you would apply that to your own organization. So when we think about the future of workplace, when I was asked to join today and do this keynote, I don't know about you, but I tend to write down the title of what I'm asked to speak about, and then I start to sort of pick it apart to give myself an idea of where I want to go. And for me, it was a pretty easy pick apart. I believe the future has arrived, and frankly arrived even before COVID. So for me, really, this was a discussion around workplace, and as I started to get into that a little bit, I thought, well, what makes up workplace? And it's sort of this amalgam of work and place. I thought, okay, um, and if nothing else, in the state we're in now and have been the last 5 6 months, we've really learned we can work from any place. So I thought, okay, well, maybe it's really the time I should spend today is really discussing place and why is place important, and what can we do with the place, with the places that we inhabit and work in the future. So I wanted to you know borrow from the past a bit here and sort of dive in. So I'm going to share a few quotes for the next few minutes, and I'm going to try to use those to sort of weave a story together, or weave a narrative together. Hopefully we can all follow along with. So the first one, I think many of us have probably heard this before, and the idea that form ever follows function. That was first said by architect Louis Sullivan in 1896. Um, in a book he wrote called "The Tall Office Building Artistically Considered," right? And the point of that quote was really, as he was trying to get across to his students and to others, that the exterior design should also reflect the interior function of the space, right? And this was sort of the first time that was really printed and said out loud. And it's an interesting concept, and I think we've all really built on that over the years. And the next one I want to share is from Winston Churchill, and he said this actually. In Parliament after the Blitz, after Parliament was bombed after the Blitz and pretty much destroyed. And his comment was around how we shape our buildings, but afterwards our buildings shape ourselves. So he was really kind of taking Sullivan's and taking it to the next place. That it's not just about form, but how we, and how we use things and how that turns to shape us. Um, Thinking that a little bit more through, one of my favorite books is written by a gentleman named Stuart Brand, and it's entitled "How Buildings Learn." And Brand, in his in early in the book, actually in the forward, I think it is, mentions this idea that yes, we shape our buildings, and then they shape us, but then we shape them again, and then we shape them again, and we sort of do it on and on. And he also then goes a little bit further, and he argues that Sullivan kind of misled a lot of folks, and with his quote, thinking that you can anticipate form. And I thought, well, that's kind of an interesting idea, because if nothing else, what we've probably all learned in the last several months is that spaces that we had that we thought served a specific purpose are now probably serving a slightly different one, right? But he also felt that Churchill truncated and said, the cycle continues and the cycle continues. So for me, that started to make it sort of a nice sort of round idea of around space. But I thought, there's more to it. It's not just about the physical space. There's got to be more. So the more I dug in, I found this next quote, and I thought this one was really, really good. That, this was a message by someone named Rita Swensel. She was a Pueblo Indian architectural historian, and when she was asked about her culture and her home village and so on, and how it's sort of changed over years and millennia, she said this, this idea that flow, continual change, continual transformation. And I thought, okay, now we're getting somewhere, right? Because this really is describing how we are today, and I think the spaces that are proving their best use and their best purpose today are the ones that are exactly this, that are ones that are showing that the ability to have continual flow and continual change and transformation. But even with that, I thought, well, she mentioned it about her home village and the culture and everything. So if we take this idea a little bit further, that, spaces can continually flow and change, we then start to get into the sense of place, right? So what gives a place, that sense of belonging, the sense that we want to be there? And John Jackson, who was an architect, a landscape architect, mentioned this in one of his books around this idea that a sense of place is something that we ourselves create in the course of time. It is the result of habit. It is the result of custom, right? And I thought, wow, that's interesting, and that's kind of a really interesting way to look at it. And if we take it sort of to this next real sort of end statement for me, and that's that place attachment. This was said by Seth Low, who's an anthropologist. Place attachment is more than all of those. It's more than the emotional and the cognitive experience, but it also includes cultural beliefs, practices that link people to a place. And that's really kind of where I want to dive in a little bit here in the next few minutes. So, as we've gone through the last, we at Cisco, and I'm sure a lot of you have really taken a moment and taken a step back to really reflect and reimagine. And we came up with some things to consider. So for us, we were really thinking about, when we think about the next generation of the workplace, like where can we really take things? We've really, COVID has given that catalyst to really adopt and given us a ton of data to really support the evolution of where we want to go next. This idea of human connectedness, I think the one thing we would all agree is we're not missing necessarily our desk and our commute, but we are missing connecting with one another. There's been a lot of chat in the press, a lot of chat. I'm sure a lot of you even had it around real estate and optimization and so on. And if we're going to do that, if we're going to optimize spaces, can we do it in such a way that we take any savings or we take anything that comes out of those optimizations and reinvest them in services and technology and amenities to better the place and to better the workspace? And then lastly, this idea, some of these long embraced norms that we've have really shifted over the years, right? So for me, the ones I've mainly noticed are, the idea that working from home, it's really not, or working from anywhere really is now just simply working, right? Every conversation that we've had, generally speaking, is technology enabled because we cannot get together and we cannot sit across from one another. And a big one for myself as a workplace strategist is that preferences, practices, so on has really evolved. And it's really taken that leap forward in the last several months that a lot of us wish it would have taken 10 years ago, but it's just come up till now. So, and this creates opportunities, right? Tons of opportunities for us on the table. Just a few that I captured here, we really need to dig into and really look at how can we better enable effective ways of working and innovating, but do it remotely. We really have to unpack that. We really have to solve that. Because if we can, the sky's the limit, prioritizing people, communities, access, those are the most important things to the basis of it all. Further combining physical, digital, and cultural space, together to really create that sort of perfect amalgam. Ensuring a level playing field for all, wherever you are. I think Andy touched on that as well, that, not everyone can work remotely. So how do we really ensure that there's a level playing field, that everyone has the same sort of access and things like that? And then a big one for me is, and I touched on it earlier, we're moving from work styles and personas really to spaces that support connectedness. That, a tethered worker, someone that needs to be in a space because of what they do, that their needs are met, but that the singular work is allowed to happen in other places perhaps, and is given that focus and that time and, what it needs to succeed as well. And I think if you do that, if you tie together the culture and the benefits and the technology, you're really putting the employee at the heart of a space, and you're providing a space that can do those sorts of things and allow whatever the individual needs to get done. So I'm running out of time, but just wanted to, in summary, just really touch on a couple of the things that I just mentioned. So for me, place, and that very much includes the workspace matters, more so now than ever. Buildings and offices will change. I mean, they're going to constantly change, but they certainly are not going away. I'm a firm believer in that. I think maybe the mixture of how we use them is going to change a bit, but they're certainly not going to go away. Engaged workspaces, are really the deliberate amalgam of place, technology, culture, benefits, and mainly leadership. It's got to be in there. Connectedness and our ability to do so is foundational. Again, preferences, practices, and leadership has shifted. And I think it's really important you take the time to really think about that and how it affects your organization. Again, to what Andy noted, learn and adapt for how you work. And lastly, we're in a moment of crisis and change right now, and I think if you remember nothing else from what I said, just remember Rena's very prolific words, and that flow, continual change, and continual transformation are what's going to lead us forward. So thank you. Appreciate it.